The views and opinions expressed in the following program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect those of KSMQ Public Service Media Incorporated or its assigns.
Most people know Alan Paige from his athletic career. First as an All-American defenseman at the University of Notre Dame, where he led the team to a national championship. Then with the Minnesota Vikings, where he was named All-Pro defensive tackle 6 times and was voted to 11 Pro Bowls. But Paige's commitment to excellence led him to even greater heights. While with the Vikings, he earned his law degree and began practicing as an attorney. In 1985, he was appointed Assistant Attorney General. And in 1992, he was elected as an Associate Justice of the Minnesota Supreme Court, the first African American to serve in that capacity. Justice Paige is also known for community service through the Paige Education Foundation, which offers scholarships to students of color, and as an advocate for education and an inspiration to young people, which brought him to Austin High School.
Thank you all for your very warm welcome. It's good to be here this afternoon in Austin. What I would like to do is briefly give you some background on myself and then talk about you and something that I think is critically important, and that is the future and the role that each one of you can play in that future. The role that each one of you can play in making that future better and brighter than what it might otherwise be. Background. I, as the introduction noted, serve on the Minnesota Supreme Court. I'm starting my 19th year there. I've been on the court longer than most of you have been alive. Before I joined the court, as you know, I played professional football with the Vikings, with the Bears, also the Chicago Bears. Any Chicago Bear fans? One or two. I got my law degree while I was playing professional football with the Vikings from the University of Minnesota. I received my undergraduate degree from the University of Notre Dame, played football there, grew up in Canton, Ohio, steel town in northeastern Ohio. I grew up there in the 1950s. During the 1950s, I was in elementary, junior high, and then high school in the early 1960s. As a young African-American male growing up in that time, at a time when in parts of this country, if you were African-American, you would not be allowed to drink from the same water fountain as white Americans. You had to ride at the back of the bus if they would let you on the bus at all. Growing up at that time, the prospects for somebody like me weren't all that great, particularly from a community where if things went really well, you might get a job in a steel mill. And that is not to say that there's anything wrong with working in steel mills. It's just that for me, even early on when I was 8, 9, 10 years old, I recognized that steel mills were dangerous and the work was hard. And you know, when you're 8, 9 years old, you're not looking for hard work. So people would ask me what I wanted to do when I grew up, and I would say I wanted to be a lawyer. I didn't know any lawyers, didn't know other than watching maybe too much Perry Mason and hearing stories about lawyers who made a lot of money and drove fancy cars and played golf every Wednesday afternoon. And so the choice was between the steel mill and playing golf every Wednesday afternoon. I thought, playing golf on Wednesdays doesn't sound so bad. Well, because I happened to be, I will call it the accident of birth, blessed with some athletic ability, I didn't have too many difficulties getting into college. I got in on the back of my football skills. I had the opportunity to choose the school that I went to from a number that were willing to pay my tuition, books, room, and board. My undergraduate degree, I knew that I had to graduate. And there were times when it was hard, but it never occurred to me that I might quit. While at that stage in my life, there was some possibility that I might play professional football. That wasn't something that that was guaranteed, number one, and not something that I was necessarily interested in. So I knew if I wanted to be able to feed myself when my playing days were over, when my college days were over, I was going to have a college degree and develop some skill. And so I persevered, made it through, got through in 4 years to graduated with the class that I entered in. Like I say, I graduated from the University of Notre Dame, was drafted by the Vikings, and came here to play. Well, I first played for the Vikings in 1967, was my rookie year. The interesting thing is, a year later, when I started my second year with the Vikings, I enrolled at William Mitchell College of Law, which is in St. Paul. It's a night school. At the time, I'd been married about a year. I had a daughter, actually been married about 2 years. I had a daughter that was a year old. And I was in the early stages of my professional football career. I wasn't committed or focused the way I should have been going back to law school. And I lasted about 3 weeks at William Mitchell. I was there in over my head. As some would suggest, I was so far in over my head that I really knew I was going to drop out after 3 or 4 days, but it took me another 2.5 weeks to figure out how to do that. That's how far underwater I was. But what I didn't realize, in addition to the football career and the new baby and the sort of starting a family, what I didn't realize was that the process of learning the law and the way they teach you in law school is radically different from undergraduate coursework, and radically different from anything I'd ever experienced in high school and before. And I thought that because I didn't understand what was going on, that I figured I was the dummy. What I didn't realize was that nobody else understood what was going on either. We were all in the same boat. And that had I simply stuck with it, I would have survived that first year in law school altogether. Fortunately, the second time around, when I enrolled at the University of Minnesota, I was committed to learning the law at whatever cost. I was prepared to do the work. I was prepared to do the work until I understood it. And the second time around was much easier. And obviously I didn't drop out and graduated. When I was involved in the early days, or I shouldn't say the early days, maybe the middle days of the labor movement in professional football. We had a strike in 1974 that I was a players' representative and on the executive committee of the union. And back then, we were not only fighting for increased wages, but also, now imagine this. I'm a 26-year-old, 27-year-old professional football player. We go to training camp, and I'm not allowed to have a phone in my dorm room. How many of you have a cell phone on you right now? Now, I'm 27 years old, and the team rule is that no phones in the dorm. Think about that. Think about, I've got this stubble of a beard. I'm 26 years old, and I have to have my hair cut to their liking. And I can't have a beard. Well, for me, this beard is, not only do I like the way it looks, but it's symbolic for me of the effort on the part of players back then to improve their conditions of work as well as their wages. One of the things that specifically I've done, consciously done, worked very hard at doing in that regard is starting the Paige Education Foundation with my wife some 23 years ago. Our goal is to encourage, motivate, and assist young men and women of color pursue their education beyond high school, to give them a lift up from the disadvantages that come and that have come with being a person of color in this society, to give them a lift so that they can give others a lift. Why did I choose to start the foundation? Because it was the opportunity for me to give back for some of the success, I shouldn't say success, some of the good fortune that I've had in my life. This was my opportunity to reach back and help others. Our goal is to do no less than to change the future, to change how people perceive education as a tool for making not only their lives better, but all of our lives better.
In 1988, Alan Paige and his wife Diane launched the Paige Education Foundation, which offers scholarships to students of color to help them obtain college degrees.
I'm the first one of my whole family generations to go to college, so that was a big thing. My goal is to have a career and be able to help my family.
We have done this a long time.
College for me was a big step because I didn't think about college before. So when I got into college, I felt really proud, and I could achieve because my family hadn't done it. So I was like, I'm the first one, I have to do it so I can show an example for my brothers and other people, like, you can do it.
A very important thing, in my opinion, is for them to have the feeling that they belong. Then also, if they belong, and if the colleagues, the peers, the friends are going to college, and then probably they are going to have the feeling that they can do it also.
In return for their assistance from the Paige Education Foundation, students are expected to foster positive attitudes towards learning through mentoring relationships with younger, school-age children of color.
For me, it's a double achievement, a double joy. One, because I can help my students here at school, and the other is because I know that will be helpful for the college student also.
I think it's a wonderful scholarship, not only to the mentors, but the mentees as well, because as they learn from us, we learn from them.
Since its inception, the Paige Education Foundation has helped 4,500 college students in Minnesota who have performed more than 300,000 hours of volunteer work.
Yeah, I've had a lot of sacrifices. I'm away from my family. I've been working hard and going to school, but I've made it and I'm here today.
But I was lucky as a young child. I had parents who knew and understood the importance of education. And they made sure that I understood that. They made sure that I went to school every day, that I was a good citizen when I was at school, and that I came home with good grades. And while I was able to do that, I made the mistake, and I think it was a serious mistake, of not working very hard in the process. So while I was able to come home and keep my parents happy and think that I was wonderful because my grades were all right, I really didn't work as hard as I could have or as hard as I should have. And I didn't, in turn, prepare myself as well as I could have had I worked hard in school. Because in addition to not learning as much material as I might otherwise have, I also didn't learn how to learn. And that's really one of the important things that you students do in school. Yes, you learn the material, but more importantly, you're learning how to learn. And once you learn how to learn, that's a skill that nobody can ever take away from you. And that's a skill that you can and will use the rest of your lives. I had to learn that skill, learn those skills later on in life. And trust me, it's a lot easier to learn it in high school than it is in law school. That being said, I was fortunate in that I prepared myself well enough so that when opportunities came along, I was able to take advantage of them. Opportunities come along. If you're not prepared for them, then they're really not opportunities. Preparing yourself in the classroom as you were doing earlier today, and you will do tomorrow and the rest of this school year and the rest of your school years, puts you in the position to make choices about where your life goes. Well, let me ask you this. Let me just ask the question. Given the choice, now this is kind of a loaded question, but given the choice, who would you like to decide your future? Do you want somebody else making that decision for you? All those that want somebody else to make that decision for them, raise their hands. Can't see any hands. All those that want to make that decision for themselves, raise your hands. Exactly. When you're prepared, you're in the position to make choices. If you're not prepared, somebody else will be making those choices for you. And so I would encourage each and every one of you to work hard, to study hard, to learn as much as you can. And then one other piece of advice from my parents through me to you. They also stress the importance of seeking excellence. They used to tell me that whatever you do in life, do it as well as you can. Be as good at what you choose to do as you possibly can be. And it doesn't matter what it is you choose to do. And seeking excellence and being as good as you can doesn't mean being as good as you can be in comparison to the person sitting next to you. It means being as good as you can be. I had the good fortune to play on a number of football teams with lots of very good football players. But if I had simply played to the level of what people expected of me, I wouldn't have performed as well as I did. If I had played and worked to be as good as my opponent or slightly better than my opponent so that I could win, if you will, I wouldn't have been nearly the football player that I was. Indeed, I likely would have been average at best, maybe a little better than average. The same is true in my legal career. If I simply had tried to perform at the level of the competition around me, I may have been able to meet that competition, but I guarantee you I wouldn't be as good as I am, however good that is. I wouldn't have performed as well as I can. So I would encourage each and every one of you to push yourself beyond what you think your limits are. And that is not to say that you're going to always be on top, but you will achieve your greatest potential. And I think that's important. The other thing I would encourage you to do is to recognize that none of us, no matter how talented we are, no matter how smart, no matter how good-looking we are, no matter what, none of us can or have had whatever success we've had without the help of others, without the assistance of others, without somebody reaching back or reaching down and help lift us up. And I believe that we all have the obligation, the opportunity, but also the obligation to reach down, to reach back, to help others improve their lot in life, to make this world we live in a better place. It is important that we be persons of character. What does that mean? It means being honest, being trustworthy, telling the truth, saying what we mean and meaning what we say, respecting ourselves and respecting others. It means trying to figure out the difference between right and wrong and then acting accordingly. The fact that I am a Supreme Court justice, Hall of Fame football player, doesn't make my character any better or any worse than anyone else's in this room. The fact that the color of my skin may be different than yours doesn't mean I'm not a good person of good character. The fact that, as I say, I'm a Supreme Court justice doesn't mean that I am a person of good character. We are all, each of us and every one of us, forced to reevaluate and renew our character every day, again and again, all the time. Character is not something that comes automatic. It's not something that's static. We have to consciously develop our character. And each one of us has the ability to do that. You know, we tend to look around and say, well, you know, the problems that we face really are other people's problems. Other people are creating them. Other people are having to deal with them. But the reality is, if you look to the person next to you, to them, you are the other person. We are the problem. We have the ability to change our character. We have the ability to be ethical. We have the ability to make this world a better place. We actually can. I see the hook is here. Thank you.